Hi, Karen. Welcome
Hi,
and thank you for joining us. Thank
thank
you. It's
you.
good to have you here today. I'm going to introduce a little bit of you to the audience for people who might not be familiar with your work first. So, Karen C. L. Anderson works with adult daughters who want to quiet, who want to both quiet the inner critical mother they have in their heads and take care of themselves in the relationship they have with their actual mothers for the most part. She also works with mothers who want to improve the relationship they have with their adult daughters. And again, this is for the most part, although today we are going to be focusing mostly on shame and creativity that relates also within Karen's work to Playmind and Workaholics and Work Martyrs. She is the host of Dear Adult Daughter podcast and author of 5 books, including the bestseller Difficult Mothers, Adult Daughters, with over 150,000 copies sold, and her most recent book, You Are Not Your Mother, Releasing Generational Trauma and Shame, a guide on how to finally identify shame and how to embrace living free from it. Hello again, Karen.
Hello, I'm
Thank
glad
you
to
for
be here. I'm
coming.
excited.
Yes, yes, thank you. Thank you for joining us. So it's a big issue, this shame. I personally had years of experience where I had no idea I had shame. And when I would have actual insights that shame, work on shame, I would hear these messages from the world that this is something that I have to look at, and I would be like, no, I don't have any shame.
Mm.
Yeah.
That is so common, and um, I think that just the very word itself can feel like, oh, that means there's something wrong with me, which in and of itself is shame.
Mhm.
And the thing that I think is most important to understand about shame is that it is an experience more than just simply an emotion. And it is something that is taught to us, not something that is just a problem with us. And it's also important, again, I think, just to sort of like, let's talk about shame at the basis of it, right? At the, what is it? How does it show up? Why do we have it, etc. So we human beings are hardwired biologically to experience the physiological um, reactions or the physiological manifestation of shame. And when I talk about the physiological manifestations of shame, what I mean is what happens when you feel ashamed. Like, what does your body want to do? You want to hide, you curl up, right? I'm exaggerating a little bit here, right? But
I
it's
turned red.
right? Turn red, prickly, pit in the stomach, right? There's a physiological reaction in us that happens. We're usually not paying attention to that, though. And when I say that we are taught to feel shame, but that I don't think we're meant to feel shame, I'm taking it out of the biology for a second.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is that um, at one time in the history of human beings, we lived in caves and we lived in tight-knit tribes and groups. And in order to survive and keep going, right, as a species, we needed shame to keep us in line, right, to keep us safe, to keep us tight-knit group.
Mhm.
And just like at one time human beings evolutionarily needed an appendix in their body to process the food that we ate thousands of years ago, right? We don't need an appendix anymore because we don't eat raw meat. Most of us don't, right? We don't eat the unprocessed raw like foods that we ate thousands of years ago. but we still have an appendix so far, right? I'm guessing that as we move along in our humanity, that someday maybe humans will be born without an appendix. But I see shame similarly, right? At one time we needed it
Mm,
in order to stay safe, in order to keep, you know,
mm,
tight with our group and to continue the species. But I think we're evolving out of it,
mm.
but we still have it. We still experience it.
Oh, how interesting. Can I have a question here for you?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So to me, it seems like a super thin line where it relates. I'm just thinking out loud as I say this. I haven't processed this thought yet, but it seems like a thin line where the relationship with empathy, with being able to even further than empathy, being able to like uh, place our psyche completely into some other person's shoes and to feel into what their being is. So between this kind of even further than empathy and shame, there might also be some relationship, because when we do something that is harmful, then the possibility of feeling that as shame seems useful.
Yes.
Yes.
And I would say that the difference is that shame is, if you want to call it, like, what is the thought or what is the belief that drives shame? And it is, there's something wrong with me. I'm bad. I'm
Mm,
not good. I'm not okay. Like, there's something at my core, there's something wrong with me, and there's no coming back from it. That's shame.
mm,
What you're talking about is guilt,
aha.
which is, I did something that I'm not proud of. I said something to that person and it hurt their feelings.
Mm,
And depending on my relationship with that person and what I want my relationship with that person to be, right? If I'm full of shame, I won't be able to make the appropriate repair with that person because I
mm,
will be so focused on, I'm bad. I don't deserve to have a relationship with that person.
mm,
Versus, oh gosh, I screwed up. I was in a bad mood that day, and and I said something off the cuff, and I didn't mean that. And because this is important to me, and because I know that I am a human being who isn't bad at my core, right? I can go to this person and say, you know what, my bad,
mm,
my
mhm,
apologies. I didn't mean that, and I'm going to do better.
mm. So yes, this is a great distinction between shame and guilt. And so you're saying, what I'm understanding is that shame is simply and solely an ego activity then.
I don't know if I would.
And it yeah.
I don't know if that's the language I would use. I'm not saying it's
Yeah,
right or
see,
wrong.
ego is not a word I'm at all fond
It's
of either. But how about if we said it like this? So in shame, what I'm understanding from what you say is that we still have some detachment, some separation, as there's who I am at the core, at the nature of being a human being, and even more than that, even more than being just human in a body and mind. And then so in guilt you have that separation. There's that, and then there's my worth as a person, as my personality and whatnot. And
right.
in
It's,
guilt you have that separation, and in shame you don't have that separation. You're identified with
yes,
yourself
exactly.
as a person so much that you're
Yes.
putting your worth into this. That's what I mean with the ego activity. Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
So,
Huh.
um, so shame, and again, if we pan out a bit and look at sort of in a bigger picture, and we, look at how we've been socialized. I mean, everyone's different. We're all the same. We're all so different. But, um, you know, how women especially have been socialized, and conditioned, and what we've been taught. And again, knowing that it's a spectrum, not everyone experiences it to this degree. Everyone's experience is different. But, speaking for myself, I can look back, and in my book, You Were Not Your Mother, which it's funny because the book is truly about shame,
Mm.
but the publisher was like, let's give it, more context. Because I wanted to make the title of the book, This Book About Shame is Full of Love,
Mm.
but they were like, that won't sell.
Mm.
Anyway, sorry.
I like You Are Not Your Mother title. I like the other one too. Yes,
Yeah.
the book
That's
about.
like inside the book is like the little subtitle. But anyway, where was I going? The way we are conditioned, and my experience of shame is, what I did in writing that book and to explain it was, I went back to times in my life, starting from when I was very, very young, where something happened around me and I internalized a message about myself. And when we internalize a message, what that means is it becomes something that just feels like the truth.
Right.
Etched in stone, there's no changing it.
Mm.
Right. And so I shared little snippets, or like little vignettes, in the first part of the book. It's kind of painful to read, actually. People are like, oh, this is so hard to read. But it's so, I think it's important to understand that that's what's happening,
Mm.
is that it's not that we are truly bad
Mm.
and evil, bad, horrible people. It's that we've internalized messages, and bringing in the mother aspect or parent aspect to this, because it's normal for a child to, when something bad happens, or when something traumatic happens, or something, happens, for the child to, it's an adaptation for the child to make it mean that it's their fault. And the reason that adaptation happens, it happens in our nervous system, is because it's safer for me to be the problem than it is for my caretaker to be the problem. Because if this is my mother's problem, then I'm not safe. So it's normal for that to happen. But what also needs to happen is the mother needs to have her own emotional maturity and her own awareness of her own shame, to be able to go to the child and to say, yes, this bad thing happened. I got angry and I yelled. This isn't a you problem, right? And to soothe and to be with the child with those big emotions, and that, scary, confusing, sad, any kind of those big emotions that surround an experience that is upsetting, right? It's the mom's job to go and make the repair with the child so they don't internalize the shame. For most of us, or many of us, right, we were sent to our rooms, right? We were told, whatever it was, and we were left alone with that. And we continually internalized, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And so then we get to be however old we are, and we're just living our lives with that message, like
Yeah.
unconsciously playing in the background.
Mhm. Yeah. And how would you relate this to workaholism and being a work martyr even?
Well, I mean, if we think about safety, right, which is a primary human need, right, is to be safe.
Mhm.
And we recognize and look at what adaptations we make in order to stay safe, right? Even if it's maladaptive, right? One of the ways that somebody might feel safe is if they are in very strict control. if they are high achieving, if they get straight A's and make the most amount of money and work really hard and have a tight grip on, right, that will keep me safe.
Yes. Until it won't.
Until it won't. Exactly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's like, I'll probably say this and, throughout our conversation, or maybe I won't, maybe this will be the only time I say it, but I think it's really important if for the takeaway is when we see these patterns in ourselves, when we recognize like, oh, I didn't realize that I've been walking around thinking I'm a pathetic loser, which is one of mine. That's one of my shame-based thoughts. All my life, the antidote isn't to get rid of the thought, right? The antidote isn't to say, oh, look, I turned into a work martyr and this is ruining my life and there's something wrong with me, right? That just perpetuates. It's to say, oh, of course I do this. Of course this is my pattern. How human of me. And you can see, I mean, I this is an automatic, right? That's the cure. That is the remedy, the medicine.
Yes. Yes. I was listening to something that Jamie Cato was saying, actually one of our experts, speakers, about how that he read, and I can't remember where he said that he had read this, and that's why I'm quoting it back to him, that if there is really no choice in the game, if given all of the circumstances, to all of the tiny little details that each person has experience of, it is actually an incredibly calculated, very precise way of behavior that it's automatic. Given everything that I've lived up to this life, the choice that I'm going to be making now is going to be exactly that choice and nothing else, because
Yeah,
I don't really have a choice in that sense, looking at it from a bigger picture.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the people I work with will say to me, I just don't want to be, I want to be untriggered. I don't want to be triggered by my mother. And
Mhm.
my thought is that I can't give you that. What I can tell you, because your body is always going to respond and it needs to, we need that. It's important for us to notice what's happening in our bodies because it's going to tell us, am I safe or not? Do I
Yeah.
need to run away because, is the house on fire? I need to be able to have the feeling, right? I
Yeah.
need to be triggered. And I think the thing that we can do, the place where we do have a choice, is once we've experienced the trigger, is can I create some space here? Right? Can I create some space here to say, okay, what's happening inside of me now? Can I give myself 5 minutes or 10 minutes or maybe 3 days before I respond to whatever is happening? Unless it's a fire, of course. If it's a fire, we need to get out. But you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and that takes practice. That takes practice. And there's a story that really illustrates this, and it's kind of funny. Can I tell a story?
Please, of course. Yes.
So a couple of years ago, I bought a rice cooker, and I'd never had a rice cooker before. So I bought this rice cooker, and I was noticing that I would put the rice and the water in and plug it in, and it has like two settings, cook and warm. And so after it's finished cooking, it clicks off and it turns on warm just to keep the rice warm. But I'd noticed after using it several times that it would click over to warm and it would be all dried out, like it would be like too cooked or overcooked, and so all the water had been boiled out and it was like burning a little bit. So I decided to add more water, and the next time I used it, I added more water, and when it clicked off or clicked over to warm, it still had a lot of water in it, and I'm like, ugh, right? So I turned it back on and it cooked some more, and finally it was okay. But I told my husband, I said, I told him what had happened, and I said, the rice might be overcooked. It might be kind of mushy because, and I explained what happened, and I told him about adding the water. And he said, well, couldn't you have just taken that extra water out? Like, once you saw that there was extra water in there. And because of my shame, right? One of my shame, like automatic trigger, like things is I'm stupid. He thinks I'm stupid, right? He thinks I'm stupid and he's probably right. And that's painful and it makes me angry, right? Um, so anger is, right, fight energy from the nervous system perspective. So he's not telling me I'm stupid, but my body, my brain, my system is interpreting. He thinks you're stupid and you are, and now you're really angry, and you're and he's going to divorce you. Right? Like, and you're going to end up living
Beginning of
out
the
in the
end.
jungle by yourself and you're going to die, right?
Yes.
And it was funny because so he said that, and immediately I started to like be angry at him. I don't know even what I was going to say, but I could feel like, and I caught it like right in the middle, and it was like, oh. I was like, oh, here's what's happening. Isn't this fascinating? Right? Of course, and that just diffused the whole situation.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't happen every single time.
Yeah. Practice
Right?
makes perfect. Yeah. We'll
And
keep
it was,
practicing.
yeah, it was practicing, and it turned into something that, as you can see on my face, right, it lights me up to tell this story because it's so human, it's so like relatable. It was a win for me,
Yeah.
right? And
Really? Yeah.
we had a good laugh over it, and it brought us closer.
Mhm. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. It sounds like we have organically segmented into play mind.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Which
Play,
is
I
where
tell
the
you.
solution is.
Yes,
Yeah.
play is a great antidote to shame.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we have identified and made it so real and concrete that it's every little thing becomes the beginning of the end. Now it's gonna all unthread and I'm gonna die anyway. And here it comes. It
Yes.
comes so real. And yeah, so we can poke a little bit holes in there with all kinds of different little exercises or whatever works, right? Yeah.
So in um in the world and the realm of understanding the nervous system and trauma, which is really a hot topic these days, um, there is the concept of triggers, right? Which is that, we have these messages that pop into our bodies. Sometimes they're necessary and sometimes they seem, as you said, maladaptive, or not useful anymore. Right? And on the other side of triggers is something that I didn't coin this, I don't know who did, but is what they call glimmers.
Glimmers. I haven't heard it.
Yes.
Hmm.
And glimmers are not like, when I think of the nervous system, I like to think of it as like it's its own animal, right? It's not logical, it's not serious, right? It's not intellectual. It is either, are we alive or are we going to die? That's all it cares about. And glimmers are not, so when I explain glimmers, a lot of people will say, oh, you mean like having a gratitude practice? And that's not what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
Because I think a lot of times what ends up happening when we have trauma, stress response, and a lot of us do for a lot of different reasons, we think that we need to do more yoga, do more meditation, have a gratitude practice, get acupuncture, whatever it is, take more vitamins, right? Like, we
Has
approach
some
it.
truth, yes.
And I'm not saying those are bad
Yeah,
things,
yeah,
but they can be like, they can become one more thing that's too regimented
yeah.
and not natural.
Hmm.
So being able, a glimmer is, so here's a glimmer for me. I um I live in Connecticut and I live near the water, and there is a boardwalk about a mile from my house that I like to take walks on.
Mm.
And on one side is the water and on the other side is a train track.
Mm. Nice.
And I walk the boardwalk and occasionally a train will come. And I wave as the train comes, right? The first time I did it, I was like waving. I don't know what came over me, but I was just like waving. And the train, the conductor in the train beeped his horn.
Ah, nice.
That's a glimmer.
That I see. Oh,
And I smiled so big and I was just so like happy after, like, oh, he beeped at me, or she, I don't know, right? The
uh-huh.
train beeped, and like that's a glimmer.
Oh,
And now
nice.
I have this memory.
Mm.
Every time I think of that, I get a like feeling, right?
Yes,
That's a glimmer.
yes, yes. And that can be a practice in and of itself. I mean,
Exactly.
not to over contrive it, but yeah, yeah. Because we are already doing something very contrived as we go about, right? And so
Yes.
then we might as well do it in a something that will evolve into a solution for the thing. Yeah, yeah,
So it's noticing, right? Like I noticed when my husband said those words, I noticed a volcano of like coming up in me, right?
yeah,
And I noticed when I waved at the train and they beeped at me, right? I noticed a feeling of like
yeah, yeah. So basically, you had enough space between your natural self, let's say, and who is behind what is experiencing everything, right? And the experiencer. So that makes that little space makes all the difference.
Yeah, it's
And
just simply about paying attention, which we don't. And because, I want to say like that isn't, it's like I want to unshame everything because like I said, we don't pay attention, right? And so a lot of people, myself included, might think, oh, see, there's something wrong with me. I don't pay attention.
right. Or we could say, like it happens to me more often than not, like I could say, yeah, I should be paying more attention. And there's the should already
But
creeping in. I
here's
would.
the thing. We were taught not to.
We were
We were
taught not to.
taught
We're
not
still
to
being
pay
taught
attention.
not to even more now, it
Yes.
seems.
So it's not a you problem,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
that like we really like even using I'm very particular about language. I was taught to versus I never learned to,
Mhm.
right? You see the
Mhm.
difference?
Yeah,
I didn't learn means
mhm.
there's something wrong with me. I wasn't taught. And it's not about blaming other people either, because it's nobody was, right? It's a it's the water we're swimming in, right? It's not like oh, it was my mother's fault or that person's fault, right? It's the water we're swimming in to not speak that way, right? To always be blaming ourselves
Or others. Yeah.
or others,
Either
right?
ourselves or others. Yeah. Blaming. Yeah. 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 Let's get back to the play mind.
Okay.
How if I am if I find myself even maybe that I don't even know, let's say that I have this behavior of hypervigilance, which I for a time I didn't really know that that's how I was behaving until I noticed that I am acting in this is hypervigilance. This is not just because I used to confuse it with putting all I've got into something, which is like I've got zest. I can do this. I'll do this. Go. I put everything I got into this, but then it's a thin line when you cross it and it's hypervigilance,
Mhm.
which has so much more to do with control, I think. For me, it had anyway, controlling the situation so that, chaos is not going to happen.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
so yeah, if I'm in the hypervigilance behavior place of things, um, how do I even notice? I don't remember what it was. I remember the first moment when I actually said, no, this is not a positive. It's not like I'm making so much effort and it's a great thing that I'm doing. I'm actually over important. I'm making myself over important by doing too much, so that I'm indispensable in this scenario kind of thing. Yeah.
I think that, I mean, it's like, how do you answer this question, right? Like, how do you realize, like, how do we realize, like, oh, this is a thing for me?
Mhm.
Until it's like, can we realize it before we're ready to realize it? Or like, as I said, I think because a lot more people are talking about this, I think people might be able to recognize it. But
Mhm.
it took me decades to see my own patterns. I'm older, I'm 61. So like, it's and I see younger people being able to recognize it sooner. And I suspect that that's just generational, right? Like every generation is going to just have wisdom and access to whatever that we didn't. Um and so something has to be able to spark our brains, or spark us to say, oh, wait a minute, what's going on here, right? Am I hypervigilant? Is this shame? Is this, what? And I don't know what that spark is, other than something happens and we take a step and we're like, oh, what's happening, right? I don't know if we can like make that happen before it happens. Is that, I don't know
Yeah,
if
yeah,
that's,
yeah. Curiosity, I guess, helps. Being curious, you're gonna find something or another, and not to look for the what's wrong with me, and let me fix it and let me make myself better kind of way. But I find, play is the way that it actually moves in, being.
yes,
I heard you say actually somewhere, which I loved so much, including myself in my kindness to others. I heard
yes,
you talk about that. Without including myself, it is not kindness.
right.
We think it is sometimes giving, giving over giving, but it's not actually working for anyone. Definitely not for ourselves either, right? Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's funny, there was an article or a blog post that I read many years ago, and I can send you the link if you're interested, but it was the difference between nice girls and kind women. And, the I it's so interesting. I don't know if we want to go off on this tangent, and if you tell me if this is not okay. I've been doing a lot of work around internalized racism and other biases. And as a white boomer named Karen, right? I come from New England. I'm like, I check all the like, privilege marks, right? I have recognized through learning from Black women, especially, that white women in general are taught to be nice in order to maintain the status quo, right? Maintain our own safety and our proximity to white men, right? Because white men is what we need in order to stay safe, right? I mean, that's like a huge generalization, but that's what we've been taught. White men hold all the power, right? And if white women want to continue to benefit from that, we need to make sure that white men are not upset with us.
Yes, it has certainly happened.
Right? So, like, okay, using that as the context, nice maintains the status quo and is at the expense of someone else.
And at the expense of someone else.
And sometimes ourselves, right?
Right.
Right? I'm going to be nice and I'm going to put up with behavior that isn't kind to me
Mhm.
in order to stay connected to the resource,
Mhm.
right? Kindness can sometimes, you know, in terms of mother-daughter relationships, I see this happen a lot. An adult daughter whose mother is abusive, dysfunctional, narcissistic, whatever you want to, whatever label you want to put in there, right? The adult daughter, that's her resource starting from when she was born, right? She depends on her mother to approve of her so that she stays alive, feeds, clothes, you know, keeps safe. And so we learn this is, I need to be nice to my mother in order for her to care for me. Again, if the mother is healthy, emotionally healthy, then it doesn't become, right? I don't have to be nice to my mother. I can be myself and she will love me. Right? But when I need to be nice, I'm not myself. I'm doing myself an unkindness. I'm not being kind to myself because I'm erasing myself in order to stay safe.
Yeah.
So kindness, right? When in a mother adult daughter relationship where the daughter is an adult now and she's starting to see that this is not okay, that the way her mother treats her, may decide to limit contact or may establish boundaries, and her mother will say, but that's not nice, right? This hurts me. I don't like this. But it's kind because the daughter isn't truly harming her mother. She set some boundaries, but boundaries don't harm, right? The mother's
And
own
boundaries.
internal, right? And the boundary then allows the daughter, right, to no longer feel resentful. And so when she shows up in the relationship with her mother from a place of kindness, which includes herself, she's not resentful. And that serves both the mother and the daughter, even if the mother doesn't like it because it's not nice.
And boundaries, I like the definition of boundaries where you're making your boundaries, right?
Yes,
You're not bounding anyone else.
exactly.
So, yeah, so
I mean, and getting, coming back to creativity and play and all of that, I just want to share something that the more playful and creative I became as I grew up, the more upset and angry my mother became at me. And, I know now, right? She was projecting all her own inability to be creative and playful and joyful and happy and have the life that she wanted on me. She didn't want me to have what she didn't have. And for a long time, right, in order to stay connected to my mother, I erased that part of myself. I erased my creativity and my silliness and, all of that in order to stay connected to her. And I had to decide at a certain point if I was willing to do that anymore. But I wanted to point to that as a reason that many people who are creative and want to express themselves in whatever way it is don't. It's probably because there's a need to stay connected to somebody who doesn't approve of that. And it's subtle. It could be very, very subtle.
And isn't it amazing? Because even if I wasn't able to be creative in my life, if I see you being creative, I can take part in that. And I can have a second, even if it's a second hand, since I feel I already lost my chance if I feel that way. then if you're having it, then we can actually partake in each other's
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah.
How would you say we could do that? How would you say if I feel like if we put this into the context of overdoing and working and even workaholics and work martyrs, how could I, let's say, if I'm working, I remember when a time when I worked so hard and I would be resentful if people around me didn't do any work and I
Mhm.
had to do their work, I felt like so that could be a way of a place where I could actually and I actually did learn how to even if I'm not able to sit and relax and enjoy not overworking, if I'm not able right now to do this and I see someone else is actually able to do this, so I started learning how to, oh, just watching them being able to do this, I can partake in that relaxation.
Yeah, well,
And
it's paying attention, right? There we go again, right? So what is it about that person? What do they believe about themselves that I don't believe about myself? And to take it on a deeper level, right, is that person feels safe in relaxing and resting. And I apparently don't. Right? So what's going on there for me? Why is it that rest and relaxation and goofing off or whatever you want to call it, right? Why is that why does my body perceive that as a threat?
Mhm.
That's a great question,
Yeah.
right? What is the threat my body is perceiving here?
Yeah. And you might have an intellectual answer to this. You could
Yeah.
say, oh, because in my childhood this and the other happened, so that's why I'm wired this way. So how maybe this could be a great if you like, this could be a good place to have some experiential journeying.
Okay.
If you like to walk us through, like, yeah, I haven't, let's say I understand intellectually that, something was threatening to me about being relaxed, so I'm not able to relax.
So can you picture a time, like an actual real experience in your life when you noticed somebody relaxing or whatever, and you had those thoughts of like, they shouldn't be relaxing. I'm working so hard. Can you think of an actual experience?
It was a very long time ago now.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. Uh, but should I remember all the way past the thing?
Yeah.
Is
I
that
mean, it doesn't
yeah,
have to be a lot of detail, but my question is, can you remember our time?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And can you now, I'm going to ask some questions. So what was actually happening? Was it in a work situation?
of course, I'm a workaholic, right? So
Okay.
it was
So
always a work
were you working for
situation.
someone else? Like what kind of a job was it?
Let's see, let's get even more specific. Um, um, let's see, what kind of a job, where was I? Um, let's see if I can find a specific situation. I mean, I'm really enjoying now when I see this happening. I can enjoy other people doing different things. So
Well, I don't want to,
yeah, I
if
can't
this is
really remember a very specific thing quickly here.
okay.
Yes.
Well, maybe instead of the specific thing, just remembering what it felt like when you saw somebody else relaxing and
Mhm.
you were working hard.
Yes.
Do you remember number one, what was the thought?
Mhm.
They shouldn't be relaxing, they're slacking, they're
What was the thought?
lazy. I don't know. You tell me.
Now I'm remembering more actually.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm thinking, what right do they have that I don't?
Okay. Perfect.
Was my thought. Yes.
Yes. So, and then can you pair with that thought a sensation in your body?
Yes.
Like what did your body do or want to do? What was the physiology of your body?
Mhm. It's a tightening in my chest and throat.
Okay, perfect.
Mhm.
Right? So you now have these clues, right? My brain thinks these thoughts that, like, I forgot what you said.
What right do they have that
Yeah,
I
what right do
don't?
they have? Yeah, right. And you compare that with the tightening in your chest and throat, and is like, okay, this is now, an experience that I've had probably many times, right? And you're very clear now on the physiology and the thoughts, and like you might say that what would you call the emotion resentment or
Uh,
anger or frustration or
yeah, I think it has to. I have to call it resentment. Although,
yeah.
yes, yes, it is
So
resentment.
if we wanted to take it to a like deeper place, you could ask yourself, when I perceive that other people aren't doing their work, and I say to myself, what right do they have? And I feel this resentment and this tightness in my chest and my throat. That means that I am what? Fill in the blank.
That means that I haven't earned my right to exist.
Shame, right? So underneath that what's happening, right, is a shame-based thought, which isn't your fault, right? That was something that you were taught. Probably not explicitly, but it was the water you were swimming in, right? Me too. Most of us. So now we've identified what's going on. The other deeper question is, what threat does my body perceive here? So if I'm, not worth, if I don't deserve resting and I haven't earned that because I'm worthless, or, whatever that language is, then from my body's perspective, I'm not safe. What
Mhm.
is the danger?
The danger is I will get a hit if I stop.
Say that again?
If I stop, I will be hit or
Yes,
die basically.
yes.
I mean, I don't know what will happen. I you want me to go? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I
but
my
that's
feeling is that if I stop, then I will be hit. I will have an impact of sorts, which is
yes,
some sort of violence or some
yes.
sort of,
Right.
negative.
So very quickly we were able to see, right, that the seemingly not silly, but like random, but normal experience of seeing somebody else not working as hard or not working at all while we're overworking, right? Right, we got to the bottom of like, well, what's happening here is I have a shame-based belief about myself that's not mine, that's not my fault. And as a result, right, my body perceives, right, that this isn't safe and I'm going to die. So it's not safe for me to rest. It's not safe for me to and I'm angry because for whatever reason they can, so it must be a me problem. Pretty much everything boils down to that. Because right at our core, we're animals that are in the wild, right?
Yes, yes. So then I can just I can remind myself to stop. It's okay. I am uh, safe right now. I have a safe environment, hopefully. And if not, then definitely I better move out from that. Of
But
course.
it all comes down to, am I safe or not? And I mean, getting back to evolution, right? Humans have not yet evolved to the point where we can assess safety in the way that we actually need to be, I think.
Mhm.
Most of the time, right? I'm sitting in a warm house, right? I've got a computer and an internet and I'm talking to you and my husband's in the other room, and it's everything is completely safe. but my body still receives cues that things aren't safe sometimes,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
And I
And
think we're more attuned to emotional safety also. We don't, yeah, that's another one. So I may be physically safe, however, emotionally not safe. Even somebody being angry at me
Mhm. But
can
if
be.
you think about it, if somebody's angry at you, you feel emotionally unsafe, but like what's the same, what is the, if you follow it all the way to the end, if that person's angry, that means what?
Well, how about just the energetic impact that I receive from somebody being angry and somebody behaving in an angry way, let's
Yeah,
say
but right,
screaming
most of
and
the time,
yelling.
right, when I like, if I perceive, and again, I understand this, but I still am triggered, right? If my husband, if I perceive that he's angry, and sometimes he is angry, sometimes he's frustrated with something that's not working, and I hear him go, ah, right?
Mhm.
I, my trigger is, uh-oh, right? Um, and if I take it all the way down to the end, I'm gonna die.
Oh, yes.
Now, somebody who's, right, if when we are in abusive relationships, right, whether it's a romantic relationship or a friend or a parent or a child or whatever it is, right, that is something to look at, right? Like if we are being abused, and if somebody is emotionally abusive, which is a thing for sure, right? That is an invitation for us to then say, okay, what boundaries do I need to have here? Maybe I need to not ever see this person again, right? Or maybe I need to, limit my contact or keep my contact in such a way that I feel protected.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about more things actually, like yeah, but now I want to first, with the time we have left, I want to talk about your offer for the viewer. Your not offer, it's called a free gift, and it's always throwing me off to call it a free gift since it's a gift. That means it's free already, but
Yeah,
we're still calling it free gift so that we know that there's nothing tied into it,
yeah,
and
no,
there's no
it's,
cost at all.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a gift.
yeah.
Uh,
So I
yeah,
have
what is it?
I created, actually it's about boundaries,
Okay.
and it is I mean it's titled, I think it's something like the definitive guide to setting boundaries with your mother, but it's, you can set boundaries with anyone, right? It's being able to set boundaries and to understand them from the perspective of, right, it's not about controlling other people, it's how do we respect ourselves,
Mhm.
right? And how, and in there I also I go into um you know the actual like formula, if you want to call it that, of setting boundaries, how to deal with the emotions that come up when we set boundaries, right? Fear, guilt are usuals, usual suspects there. But then
Mhm.
also, how do we create safety in our bodies when we're setting boundaries so that we can set boundaries? So it's,
Beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great step. I think it's vital, boundaries
yeah.
in all that we talked about. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much. This was
Karen.
a lot
Thank
of
you
fun,
so
and
much.
I'm
Thank you so
excited.
much. Yes, yes, I wish we had more time to go more, but we will gonna respect the viewers' time
Yes.
and leave it at the set time with which we promised. And yes,
Well, I was just going to say, yes, when you get my free gift, you sign up for my mailing list, and I talk a lot about this in my love notes, as I like to call them. Um, but obviously, feel free to unsubscribe, but also understand that what I am saying in our conversation today is the kind of stuff I share in my newsletter. It's not just buy my thing, buy my thing, buy my thing.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you. I'm wishing everyone wonderful and safe boundaries
Yes.
and
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 play.
good journeying into this play of finding out, being curious what's in there. Yeah. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
everyone.
Tara.
Thank you, everyone.